When an Amish blacksmith's hammer strikes iron in rural Pennsylvania, the last person you'd expect to notice is Elon Musk. But when Mayor Douglas Kane announces plans to bulldoze a 200-year-old Amish settlement for a $450 million distribution hub, something catches the tech billionaire's eye. A metal bracket in Tesla's earliest prototypes, handcrafted by Jacob Fisher, who's never owned a smartphone or sent an email. The Amish have just 72 hours before bulldozers arrive, bound by traditions that forbid them from fighting back. What unfolds isn't just a clash between tradition and technology, but a race against time where two opposite worlds discover an unexpected truth. Sometimes the future isn't about replacing the past, it's about protecting it. The solution that saves New Hope Village would change how both men see progress forever. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The Lancaster County Town Hall buzzed with anticipation as the clock struck 7. Metal folding chairs creaked under the weight of bodies, shifting in anticipation. Mayor Douglas Kane stood at the podium, his silver hair catching the fluorescent light, a practiced smile fixed firmly in place. Behind him, a large projection screen displayed architectural renderings of gleaming glass buildings and sprawling concrete expanses. Jacob Fisher sat in the back row, his straw hat resting on his lap. His calloused hands, darkened by years of working the forge, looked out of place against the simple blue fabric of his homemade trousers. Several other men from New Hope Village sat beside him, their beards and plain clothes marking them as Amish among the English crowd that filled the hall. "Friends and neighbors," Mayor Kane began, his voice carrying the polished cadence of a man who had delivered countless speeches. "Today marks the beginning of a new chapter for Lancaster County." He gestured toward the screen behind him where the words, "Lancaster County Distribution Hub, Building Tomorrow's Economy Today," glowed in bold letters. "This project represents a $450 million investment in our community. 3,000 new jobs, tax revenue that will rebuild our schools, repair our roads, and revitalize our economy for generations to come." A ripple of applause moved through the crowd. Jacob remained still, his weathered face impassive. Brother Samuel, the elder of their village, sat beside him, nodding slightly, not in agreement but in resignation. "Progress waits for no one," Kane continued, his voice rising with practiced enthusiasm. "In these challenging economic times, we must adapt or be left behind." Jacob's eyes drifted to a small paragraph on page 17 of the handout that had been distributed, a section labeled Land Acquisition and Relocation Provisions. The words seemed to leap from the page, including the resettlement of current residents in the affected areas of New Hope Township. His heart quickened. New Hope wasn't just a place, it was their home for generations, the burial ground where his parents and grandparents rested, the fields where his children learned to plow, the workshop where he'd taught his sons, the blacksmith's craft, just as his father had taught him. "All legal provisions have been satisfied," Mayor Kane was saying, "and with the council's vote last month, we're proud to announce that groundbreaking will commence in 90 days. A young woman near the front raised her hand. "Sarah Mitchell, Lancaster Daily News," she said, standing. "Mayor Kane, could you address the concerns about displacing the Amish community that's been in New Hope for over 200 years? The mayor's smile never faltered. "Ms. Mitchell, I appreciate your concern. The affected residents will be generously compensated, well above market value. We've identified suitable relocation areas that will allow them to maintain their way of life, while making room for progress that benefits the entire county." Jacob's fingers tightened around the handout, crinkling the paper. It was the first time in his 47 years that he'd felt anger burn so hot within him. Their land wasn't for sale, at any price. "The Amish are respected members of our community," Kane continued smoothly, "and we've taken their unique needs into consideration. But we must balance tradition with progress." Brother Samuel leaned over, his voice barely a whisper. "We must accept God's will, Jacob. If he means for us to move, then move we shall." Jacob nodded automatically, the expected response. The Amish way was one of non-resistance, of yielding rather than fighting. Who was he to question 2 centuries of tradition? Yet something inside him rebelled. As the meeting concluded, Jacob stood with the others, placing his hat carefully atop his head. As they filed toward the exit, he caught the eye of the journalist, Sarah Mitchell, who was watching him intently. For a moment their gazes locked, and Jacob realized his hands were clenched into fists at his sides. He quickly relaxed them, embarrassed by this display of emotion. "Excuse me," Sarah said, stepping closer. "I'd like to hear your perspective on the mayor's announcement." Brother Samuel intervened gently. "We do not seek attention from the outside world. We will pray and accept what comes." Sarah's eyes remained on Jacob. "And you, sir? Do you share that view?" Words formed in Jacob's mind, words of protest, of outrage, but he swallowed them. "We trust in God's plan," he said finally, the expected answer, though it tasted like ash in his mouth. The drive home in the buggy was silent, save for the rhythmic clip-clop of the horse's hooves against the asphalt. Stars peppered the night. Sky, the same stars his ancestors had used to navigate to this land centuries ago. The thought of leaving felt like betrayal. Later that night, after his wife and children had gone to bed, Jacob sat alone in his workshop by the light of a single oil lamp. The smell of coal and iron hung in the air, comforting in its familiarity. He ran his fingers over an old horseshoe, one of the first pieces he'd ever forged under his father's guidance. What he didn't know, couldn't know, was that similar pieces had made their way through a distributor to become components in the earliest prototypes of Tesla's revolutionary electric vehicles. That somewhere, cataloged in the archives of a company that represented everything opposite to the Amish way of life, his craftsmanship had helped build the future. Jacob placed the horseshoe back on his workbench and buried his face in his hands. The sound of Brother Samuel's words echoed in his mind. Accept God's will. But what if God's will wasn't passive acceptance? What if, just this once, it required something else, something that went against everything he'd been taught? Outside, a car passed on the distant highway, its headlights briefly illuminating the workshop through the window. Jacob looked up, watching the beam sweep across his tools. The hammer, the anvil, the forge. Implements that had remained unchanged for generations. In that moment, as the light faded and darkness reclaimed the room, something awakened in Jacob Fisher, something that had been dormant his entire life. The desire to fight back. Elon Musk's fingers drummed impatiently against the polished conference table in Tesla's Austin headquarters. Around him, executives droned on about production quotas and supply chain optimizations. Their voices faded to background noise as his mind drifted elsewhere. "So we're looking at a 17% increase in battery efficiency if we implement the new cooling system," someone was saying. Elon nodded absently, his attention already captured by his phone screen. Twitter, his digital playground and occasional battlefield, offered more immediate stimulation than the meeting. He scrolled through his feed, pausing occasionally at something that caught his interest. A notification appeared. Amish eviction, trending in Pennsylvania and surrounding states. Curious, he tapped on it. The hashtag led to a series of photos and reposts of a news article titled, "Progress at What Cost? Historic Amish Settlement Faces Demolition." The byline read, "Sarah Mitchell, Lancaster Daily News." The article was accompanied by several photos. Solemn Amish men in a town hall meeting, architectural renderings of a massive industrial complex, and, most poignantly, a bearded man in traditional Amish clothing standing outside a blacksmith shop, his weathered face a study in quiet dignity. The caption identified him as Jacob Fisher, master blacksmith and lifelong resident of New Hope. "Elon, your thoughts on this?" A voice broke through his concentration. "Give me a minute," he replied, not looking up from his phone. Something about the story had hooked him, perhaps the David and Goliath narrative, or maybe just the blatant injustice of bulldozing a centuries-old community for yet another distribution center. He continued scrolling through the comments and responses to the article. One particular thread caught his eye, a close-up photo someone had taken of Fisher's workshop, visible in the background of one of the original photos. The commenter had written, "Look at the craftsmanship of these tools. They don't make things like this anymore. Elon zoomed in on the image. Among the tools visible on the workbench was something oddly familiar. A distinctive curved metal bracket with an unusual pattern of hammer marks. He'd seen that exact piece before. "Everyone take 5, he said suddenly, standing up. "I need to check something." Without waiting for a response, he strode out of the conference room, leaving his executives exchanging puzzled glances. In his private office, Elon pulled up the archives of Tesla's earliest prototypes. When they'd first started, before the billions and the factories, they'd sourced parts from unlikely places. Specialty metalworkers, custom fabricators, anyone who could provide the quality they needed when traditional suppliers couldn't or wouldn't work with them. It took him less than 10 minutes to find what he was looking for. There, in the documentation for the very first Roadster prototype, was a supplier note. Specialty metal components, brackets, hinges, custom fittings, source point distributors, specialty metalwork division, and in the accompanying images, the exact same distinctive bracket visible in Jacob Fisher's workshop. Elon leaned back in his chair, a smile spreading across his face. It was almost poetic. An Amish blacksmith, the embodiment of tradition and craftsmanship, had unknowingly contributed to one of the most revolutionary technological products of the modern era. He picked up his phone and dialed. "Get the jet ready," he instructed when his assistant answered. "I'm going to Pennsylvania." "Pennsylvania? But sir, you have 3 more meetings today, and tomorrow's the board presentation. Reschedule them." "This is more important." He paused, considering. "And see what you can find out about a Mayor Douglas Kane in Lancaster County and a development project called the Lancaster County Distribution Hub." "May I ask why, sir?" Elon looked once more at the image of Jacob Fisher standing before his workshop. "Let's just say I'm returning a favor that's long overdue." Sarah Mitchell hunched over her laptop at her favorite corner table in Lancaster. Brew, a local coffee shop that had become her unofficial office. 3 empty espresso cups testified to the long hours she'd been working. Her article on the New Hope situation had been published that morning, and the response had exceeded anything she'd expected. Local news rarely generated this kind of engagement. Her editor had already called twice asking for follow-ups. She scrolled through the online comments, social media shares, and emails that had flooded in since publication. Most expressed outrage at the treatment of the Amish community, though there were also those who defended the development as necessary progress. One comment in particular caught her attention. "Look deeper into the land acquisition. Kane's been buying up properties around New Hope through shell companies for years. This didn't happen overnight." The commenter used a pseudonym, but the tip felt credible. Sarah made a note to visit the county records office. If the mayor had been assembling this deal in secret, there would be a paper trail. Her phone buzzed with a text from her editor. "Your story's blowing up. National outlets picking it up. Got a follow-up angle?" Sarah smiled. This was her chance. The kind of story that could launch her beyond the limited orbit of local journalism. She typed back, "Working on it. Think there's corruption. Give me 48 hours." She gathered her notes, paid her bill, and headed for her car. The county records office closed at 5, giving her just under 2 hours to begin digging. Jacob stood in his workshop, hammer in hand, but the metal on his anvil remained untouched. For the first time in his life, he couldn't lose himself in his craft. His mind kept returning to the town hall meeting 3 days earlier, to the casual way Mayor Kane had dismissed generations of Amish life as an inconvenience to be relocated. A soft knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. His eldest son, Eli, entered, concern evident in his young face. "Father, the elders are gathering at Brother Samuel's. They've asked for you to join them." Jacob nodded, setting down his hammer. "Did they say what it's about?" "The English newspaper wrote about us, about New Hope." Eli hesitated. "They used your picture, Father." Jacob frowned. The Amish avoided publicity, preferring to live apart from the outside world's attention. Being featured in a newspaper article would not be viewed favorably by the elders. "Thank you, Eli. Tell your mother I'll be back for supper." As Jacob hitched his horse to the buggy, He could see neighbors gathered in small groups along the road, talking in low voices. News traveled quickly in their close-knit community, even without telephones or internet. The 15-minute ride to Brother Samuel's homestead gave Jacob time to consider his position. The elders would likely counsel acceptance and prayer. They would remind everyone that the Amish way was one of non-resistance, of yielding to outside authority without protest. But as his buggy rounded the final bend in the road, Jacob found himself questioning whether silent acceptance was truly God's will in this situation. Not just their homes, but their very way of life was at stake. The relocated land wouldn't have the fertile soil they'd cultivated for generations, the carefully managed forests that provided their wood, or the spring-fed streams that watered their crops and animals. 6 buggies were already parked outside Brother Samuel's home when Jacob arrived. He secured his horse and entered the house, removing his hat as he stepped into the main room where the men had gathered. Brother Samuel sat at the head of the table, his long white beard resting against his chest. At 73, he had been elder for nearly 2 decades, his wisdom guiding the community through challenges both large and small, but nothing in their collective memory compared to the complete displacement they now faced. "Brother Jacob," Samuel said, gesturing to an empty chair. "We were just discussing the newspaper article." Jacob took his seat, feeling the weight of 7 pairs of eyes upon him. "I did not seek this attention," he said quietly. "We understand that," Samuel replied. "But your photograph is there for all the world to see. The English are using our plight to stir controversy." Another elder, Abram Miller, cleared his throat. "The reporter, this Mitchell woman, came to my farm yesterday asking questions. I told her we accept whatever comes and seek no conflict." Brother Samuel nodded approvingly. "This is the way. We do not resist the authorities. If we must move, then we will move." Jacob felt the words rise in his throat before he could stop them. "And where shall we move to, Brother Samuel? What land within our means will support our 38 families? Where will we find soil that knows our hands as this soil does?" A uncomfortable silence fell over the room. It was rare for anyone to question Brother Samuel directly. "God will provide," Samuel said finally, "as he always has." "And if God's provision is for us to stay?" Jacob asked. "What if our silence is not what he asks of us in this moment?" Brother Samuel's expression remained placid, but his eyes reflected concern. "You speak dangerously close to pride, Jacob. Our ways have preserved us for hundreds of years. Who are we to question them now?" "I question not our ways," Jacob responded carefully, "but whether our ways dictate only one response to this threat. Our ancestors came to this land seeking freedom to live according to their beliefs. Is defending that freedom truly against our teachings?" The room grew tense. Several of the men shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "What would you have us do?" asked Abram. "March with signs? Hire lawyers? Become like the English, fighting in their courts and protests?" Jacob shook his head. "I don't know. I only know that accepting the destruction of New Hope without any effort to preserve it feels wrong in my spirit." Brother Samuel's voice remained gentle, though his words carried the weight of authority. "We will pray on this matter. We will seek God's wisdom. But I caution you, Jacob, do not let anger guide your heart. Pride and defiance have led many astray." Jacob nodded, properly chastened, yet the ember of resistance continued to glow within him. As the meeting concluded with prayer, he wondered if any of the others felt the same conflict, duty to tradition warring with love for their home. As he prepared to leave, Brother Samuel pulled him aside. "I have known you since you were a boy, Jacob. I know your heart is true. But this path you contemplate, it may separate you from our ways." "I love our ways, Brother Samuel," Jacob replied. "That is why I cannot bear to see them bulldozed into memory." The elder's weathered hand came to rest on Jacob's shoulder. "Pray, Jacob, listen for God's voice, not your own." The ride home gave Jacob time to reflect. Brother Samuel's warning echoed in his mind, yet he couldn't shake the feeling that this situation called for something beyond passive acceptance. By the time he reached his farm, the sun was setting, painting the fields and buildings with golden light. The beauty of it clutched at his heart. This land had shaped his family for generations, and they had shaped it in return. As he unhitched his horse, he noticed his youngest daughter, Rebecca, just 6 years old, playing near the edge of the cornfield. She looked up at him and smiled, her face radiant with innocence and joy. In that moment, Jacob knew he couldn't simply surrender her birthright, without at least trying to preserve it. What that effort might look like, he didn't yet know, but the seed of determination had been planted. 40,000 feet above the Midwest, Elon Musk reclined in his private jet, reviewing the information. His team had hastily assembled on Mayor Douglas Kane and the New Hope situation. So Kane's been quietly buying land around the Amish village through shell companies for 3 years, he mused, flipping through digital documents on his tablet. And once he had everything surrounded, he pushed through the rezoning and eminent domain claims. His assistant nodded. The development company, Horizon Partners, made significant contributions to his last campaign. Their CEO, Henry Lawson, has been quoted saying this distribution hub will be the cornerstone of their Eastern logistics network. Classic, Elon muttered. Use political connections to seize undervalued land, develop it with taxpayer subsidies, then profit when the property values skyrocket. He shook his head. How much time do the Amish have? The official notice gives them 90 days from last week's announcement. Bulldozers are scheduled to begin clearing the outlying areas in 6 weeks. Elon stared out the window at the darkening landscape below. And our legal options? Limited, his assistant admitted. The eminent domain claim appears solid legally, though the ethics are questionable. The compensation offered is technically above market value, but that's based on agricultural assessments, not the true worth of established farms and businesses. What about environmental protections? Historical significance? New Hope isn't on any historical registry, unfortunately, and while there are some wetlands that might trigger environmental reviews, the developers have already submitted workarounds. Elon drummed his fingers on the armrest, his mind racing through potential solutions and discarding them just as quickly. Money alone wouldn't solve this. If he simply offered to buy the land, Kane and the developers would just raise the price or find legal obstacles. This required a more creative approach. Pull up everything we have on sustainable community development, he said suddenly, and get me the specs for our latest off-grid power systems. Sir, are you thinking of offering the Amish modern technology? His assistant looked confused. I thought they rejected such things. A smile spread across Elon's face, the same expression he wore when connecting seemingly disparate ideas into a revolutionary whole. They reject technology that would change their way of life or connect them to the outside world, he corrected. But what if we could create something that would protect their independence instead of threatening it? His eyes gleamed with the excitement of a new challenge. And what if that same solution created a legal firewall that even Kane couldn't penetrate? The assistant, accustomed to Elon's conceptual leaps, began taking notes. What do you have in mind? Something extraordinary, Elon replied, already lost in the possibilities unfolding in his mind. Something that honors the past while securing the future. He paused, looking down at the image of Jacob Fisher on his tablet. Something worthy of the craftsmanship that helped build Tesla. The jet continued eastward through the night sky, carrying toward Pennsylvania a force of nature that neither Mayor Kane nor the quiet Amish of New Hope could possibly anticipate. As dawn broke over New Hope the following morning, Jacob emerged from his house to find an unexpected visitor waiting near his workshop. Sarah Mitchell stood beside her car, notebook in hand, her expression a mixture of determination and uncertainty. Mr. Fisher, she said as he approached, I apologize for coming so early, but I hope to speak with you before you began your day. Jacob regarded her cautiously. The elders would not approve of him speaking further with the English reporter, whose article had drawn so much attention to their community. I have nothing to add to what was already said, he replied, moving toward his workshop. Please, Sarah persisted, following him. I've uncovered information about how the mayor acquired the land surrounding New Hope. There's corruption involved, illegal activities that could potentially stop this project. Jacob paused, his hand on the workshop door. Our ways do not involve the English legal systems or politics. I understand that, Sarah said. But this isn't about politics, it's about justice. The mayor has been manipulating the system using shell companies to hide his connections to the developers. He's profiting personally from forcing you out. Against his better judgment, Jacob felt his interest piqued. How would this information help us? If I can prove the corruption, it could delay or even halt the development while investigations take place, Sarah explained. But I need to understand more about New Hope, how long your families have been here. What makes this specific land important to your way of life? Jacob hesitated, torn between adherence to tradition and the possibility of saving his community. Before he could respond, the distant sound of an aircraft drew their attention skyward. Most planes flew high overhead, barely visible from New Hope. But this one was descending, its sleek form growing larger as it approached the small regional airport several miles away. Neither Jacob nor Sarah could have guessed that aboard that plane was a man whose arrival would forever alter the fate of New Hope, a man whose life's work represented the very technological progress that the Amish had chosen to reject, yet whose intervention would ultimately become their salvation. The aircraft disappeared behind the tree line, leaving them unaware that worlds were about to collide in ways that would challenge everything they thought they knew about progress, tradition, and the unexpected connections that sometimes bind the most unlikely allies. The sleek Tesla Model X looked almost otherworldly as it glided along the narrow country road that led to New Hope. Behind it followed two black SUVs carrying Elon's small team of assistants, engineers, and security. The morning sunlight glinted off the vehicle's polished surfaces, creating a stark contrast with the pastoral landscape. Children playing near the roadside stopped to stare as the unusual procession passed. An elderly Amish woman tending her garden straightened, shielding her eyes with one hand as she watched the vehicles approach. Word of the strange visitors spread quickly through the community, carried by running children and surprised calls between neighbors. In the lead car, Elon peered through the window at the farms and workshops that made up New Hope. The simplicity struck him, buildings designed for function rather than appearance, fields cultivated with horse-drawn plows, clothes hanging on lines to dry in the spring breeze. It was so far removed from his world of rockets, electric vehicles, and neural interfaces that it might as well have been another planet. "Are you sure this is a good idea?" asked his assistant from the passenger seat. "These people have deliberately chosen to live apart from modern technology. You might be the last person they want to see." Elon smiled slightly. Sometimes the most improbable connections are the most meaningful. He tapped the small metal component sitting on the console. Between them, the bracket he'd tracked down in Tesla's archives. "Besides, I'm not here to change their way of life. I'm here because someone's trying to take it away from them." The cars pulled up near Jacob Fisher's blacksmith shop, where Jacob stood in conversation with Sarah Mitchell. Both turned to stare as the vehicles came to a stop and Elon stepped out, dressed casually in jeans and a dark t-shirt, but still unmistakably out of place in the Amish setting. Sarah recognized him instantly, her journalistic instincts firing. "That's Elon Musk," she whispered to Jacob, disbelief evident in her voice. Jacob's brow furrowed in confusion. The name meant nothing to him. Elon approached them, the metal bracket held carefully in his hand. "Jacob Fisher?" he asked, extending his other hand in greeting. Jacob nodded, hesitantly accepting the handshake. "I am he. I'm Elon Musk. I'd like to talk to you about your work and about New Hope." He glanced at Sarah. "And you must be Sarah Mitchell. Your article is what brought me here." Sarah recovered from her surprise quickly, professional curiosity overriding her shock. "Mr. Musk, this is unexpected. May I ask why the CEO of Tesla and SpaceX is personally interested in an Amish village in Pennsylvania?" "It's a long story," Elon replied, turning his attention back to Jacob. "One that Mr. Fisher might find interesting." He held up the metal bracket. "Do you recognize craftsmanship like this?" Jacob took the bracket, examining it with a craftsman's eye. His fingers traced the distinctive hammer marks, the precise curves, the subtle signs that marked it as handmade rather than machine-produced. "This is my work," he said finally, surprise evident in his voice. "From many years ago. How did you come to have it?" By now, a small crowd of curious onlookers had gathered at a respectful distance. Among them was Brother Samuel, his expression troubled as he watched the interaction. "Perhaps we could speak somewhere more private?" Elon suggested, noticing the growing audience. Jacob hesitated, then nodded. "We can talk in my workshop." As they moved toward the small building, Brother Samuel stepped forward. "Jacob," he called, his voice carrying a note of warning. Jacob paused, torn between respect for the elder and his growing curiosity about this strange visitor and the familiar piece of metalwork. "It is only talk, Brother Samuel," Jacob said. "There is no harm in listening." The elder's disapproval was evident, but he did not intervene further as Jacob led Elon and Sarah into the workshop. Inside, the space was cool and dim, sunlight filtering through small windows. The walls were lined with tools, many handmade, arranged with meticulous care. The forge stood cold in the corner, but the smell of coal and iron permeated the air. Elon looked around with genuine appreciation. "This is remarkable," he said. "The craftsmanship in this room represents generations of knowledge." Jacob watched him cautiously. "You still have not explained how you came to possess my work or why it brings you here." Elon placed the bracket on the workbench. "In 2008, when Tesla was still a struggling startup, we needed custom components for our first prototype vehicles, parts that didn't exist yet that had to be designed from scratch. We sourced them from specialty metalworkers through various distributors." He tapped the bracket. "This piece, and others like it, ended up in our earliest models. They were crucial to solving particular engineering challenges we faced." Jacob's eyes widened slightly. "Tesla, these are the electric automobiles?" "Yes. And this particular piece was part of the battery mounting system. The quality of your work helped make our vision possible." Elon studied Jacob's face. "Your craftsmanship has traveled much further than you knew." Jacob picked up the bracket again, turning it over in his hands. The revelation that his work had become part of the very technology his community rejected was disorienting. He felt a complex mix of pride in his craft and unease at its ultimate purpose. "I sell my work to various buyers," he said finally. "I do not ask where it goes after it leaves my hands." "That's often true for all creators," Elon replied. "We send our work into the world, never fully knowing its impact." He paused. "But sometimes we get a chance to see the connections. And sometimes those connections bring us full circle." Sarah, who had been quietly observing, spoke up. "So you came all this way because of this connection? Because parts made by an Amish blacksmith ended up in your cars?" "Partly," Elon admitted. "When I saw the article about New Hope, something about it resonated with me. Then I recognized Mr. Fisher's work from the photos, and it felt significant, like finding out a piece of your own history is at risk." He turned back to Jacob. "I understand that your community is being forced to relocate for a development project. I'd like to help prevent that." Jacob's expression remained guarded. "We do not seek outside interference in our affairs, and we do not accept charity." "It's not charity I'm offering," Elon clarified. "It's a partnership. One that respects your traditions while creating a solution that Mayor Kane and his developers can't easily dismiss." "What kind of partnership could exist between your world and ours?" Jacob asked. "We have chosen to live apart from modern technology. Your life's work is creating that very technology." Elon smiled. "That's what makes it interesting. On the surface, we couldn't be more different. But I think we share something fundamental. A respect for craftsmanship, for quality work done with care and purpose." He gestured around the workshop. "You build things to last generations. I try to build things that will serve generations. Different methods, similar values." The sincerity in his voice gave Jacob pause. He had expected arrogance or condescension from this English billionaire, not this thoughtful reflection on shared values. "Even if what you say is true," Jacob replied carefully, "how would such a partnership save our land?" That's where I need to understand more about New Hope, about your community's needs and values, Elon said. But I have some initial ideas. That might create a legal framework to protect your land while preserving your way of life. Sarah, ever the journalist, had been taking mental notes throughout the conversation. Mr. Musk, are you suggesting some kind of technological solution for an Amish community? That seems contradictory. Only if you see technology and tradition as inherently opposed, Elon countered. But they don't have to be. Technology, at its best, should serve human needs and values, not replace them. Jacob considered this, remembering his own internal struggles of the past days. Brother Samuel would say that we have chosen our path precisely to avoid the complications that come with your world. And I respect that choice, Elon said. I'm not suggesting changing your way of life. I'm suggesting finding a way to protect it using tools your community might not have access to. Before Jacob could respond, the workshop door opened and Eli appeared, slightly out of breath. Father, Brother Samuel has called for an elders' meeting. He requests your presence immediately. The young man's eyes darted curiously toward Elon. Before returning to his father, Jacob nodded. Tell him I will come shortly. After Eli departed, he turned back to Elon. The elders will not approve of outside involvement in our affairs. Will you at least hear my ideas before dismissing them? Elon asked. Jacob was silent for a moment, weighing his loyalties against his growing conviction that New Hope needed more than prayer to survive. Return tomorrow, he said finally. After midday, I will listen to what you propose. Elon nodded, recognizing the significance of even this small concession. Thank you. I'll be back tomorrow with more concrete plans. As they stepped out of the workshop, they found the gathering of onlookers had grown. Brother Samuel stood at the forefront, his expression stern. Jacob, he said, his voice carrying across the yard, the elders are waiting. Jacob nodded respectfully. I am coming, Brother Samuel. Elon, sensing the tension, stepped back. Until tomorrow, then. As Jacob walked away with Brother Samuel, Sarah turned to Elon. They're not going to make this easy for him, she observed. Or for you. The most worthwhile things rarely come easily, Elon replied, watching Jacob's retreating figure. But I think Mr. Fisher has more courage than even he realizes. The elders' meeting was held in Brother Samuel's barn, away from curious ears. 8 men sat on simple wooden benches, their expressions ranging from concern to outright disapproval. Jacob stood before them feeling like a schoolboy called to account for misbehavior. You invited an outsider into your home, Brother Samuel began, his tone measured but firm. And not just any outsider, but one who represents everything our way of life stands against. I did not invite him, Jacob clarified. He came unannounced. It would have been discourteous to turn him away without hearing why he had traveled so far. And why did he come? Asked Abram Miller, stroking his gray beard thoughtfully. Jacob hesitated, unsure how to explain the strange connection between his metalwork and Elon's vehicles. He believes he can help us preserve New Hope, he said finally. He has ideas that might prevent the development. Brother Samuel shook his head. Jacob, you know our ways. We do not resist authorities. We do not engage in legal battles with the English. If the Lord wills that we must move, then we will move. And if the Lord has sent this man to help us, Jacob countered, surprising himself with his boldness. Would it not be prideful to refuse help that is offered? Murmurs ran through the group of elders. Such direct questioning of their leader was unusual. Pride works in many forms, Samuel replied calmly. Sometimes it appears as resistance to change that God has ordained. Sometimes it appears as the belief that we know better than the generations before us who established our ways. Another elder, Jeremiah Lapp, spoke up. What does this Englishman propose? More money? Legal challenges? These are not our ways. I do not yet know the details, Jacob admitted. He will return tomorrow to explain his ideas. Brother Samuel's eyes narrowed slightly. You arranged to meet with him again? Without consulting the elders first? Jacob felt a flush of shame, but also a flicker of defiance. I wish to hear his proposal before troubling the elders with it. If there is nothing of value in his ideas, there would be no need to bring it before you. That decision was not yours alone to make, Samuel said firmly. We lead together as we always have. Jacob bowed his head in acknowledgement of the rebuke, though internally he still believed he had done nothing wrong. What would you have me do? Send him away when he returns? The elders exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them. Finally, Brother Samuel sighed. We will hear what he has to say, he decided. Not because we seek outside help, but because we must understand what is happening around us. The meeting will take place here, with all the elders present. Jacob nodded, relieved yet also concerned. Elon's ideas might be too foreign, too modern for the elders to consider, but at least they would be heard. As the meeting concluded and the men filed out, Brother Samuel held Jacob back with a gentle hand on his arm. You walk a dangerous path, my friend, the elder said softly, genuine concern in his eyes. This Englishman, whatever his intentions, belongs to a world we have chosen to reject. Be careful that in trying to save our land you do not lose something more precious. Jacob met the older man's gaze. I will be careful, Brother Samuel, but I must also be true to what my heart tells me is right. Samuel's expression softened, slightly. Your heart has always been good, Jacob. Just remember that it can also be misled. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Later that evening, as dusk settled over New Hope, Sarah Mitchell sat in her car, parked along a quiet country road, speaking urgently into her phone. I'm telling you, Tom, this is huge, she said to her editor. Elon Musk, yes, that Elon Musk is personally involved in trying to save the Amish village. That's unexpected, her editor replied, sounding slightly stunned. How did that happen? It's a bizarre connection, Sarah explained. Apparently, this Amish blacksmith unknowingly made parts that ended up in early Tesla prototypes. Musk saw my article, recognized the craftsmanship, and flew in on his private jet today. She paused. But there's more. I've been digging into Mayor Kane's land dealings and I've found something significant. I'm listening. Kane has been acquiring properties surrounding New Hope through shell companies for years, and the environmental impact study for the development project? It was conducted by a firm owned by his brother-in-law. The whole thing stinks of corruption and conflicts of interest. Do you have documentation? Enough to raise serious questions. I need another day or two to solidify everything. Her editor was silent for a moment. This could be big, Sarah. Bigger than anything we've covered before. Do you need resources? Help? Just time, she replied, watching as the last light faded from the sky. And maybe legal review before we publish. Kane will come after us hard when this drops. You'll have it. Keep me updated, especially on the Musk angle. That's going to draw national attention. After ending the call, Sarah sat for a while, contemplating the strange turn of events. An Amish village, a corrupt mayor, and one of the world's richest men. It was more than a local story now. It was a clash of worlds, of values, of visions for the future. And somewhere in the middle was Jacob Fisher, a man caught between centuries of tradition and the pressing need to adapt to survive. Sarah found herself hoping that whatever Elon proposed tomorrow would somehow thread that impossible needle, preserving the Amish way of life while fending off the forces that threatened to destroy it. Mayor Douglas Kane sat in his expansive office, the lights of Lancaster visible through the large windows behind his desk. Across from him sat Henry Hank Lawson, CEO of Horizon Partners and the driving force behind the distribution hub project. I don't like delays, Doug, Lawson said, swirling the whiskey in his glass. At 57, with silver hair and the trim build of someone who could afford personal trainers, he exuded the confidence of a man accustomed to getting his way. Every week this project sits idle costs us money. Kane leaned back in his chair. It's under control, Hank. The Amish don't have the resources or inclination to fight this. They'll move when the time comes. That's not what I'm hearing, Lawson countered. Word is there's been unusual activity in New Hope today. Visitors. Fancy cars. He fixed Kane with a hard stare. And that reporter is still sniffing around asking questions about the land acquisitions. Kane waved dismissively. Local journalism. Nobody pays attention to the Lancaster Daily News. People are paying attention to this story, Doug. It's getting traction online. The heartless mayor destroying Amish paradise narrative plays well on social media. Since when do you care about social media? Kane scoffed. Since it can affect stock prices and investor confidence, Lawson replied sharply. Our shareholders expect this project to proceed smoothly. Protests, media scrutiny, delays, these things make investors nervous. Kane sighed, rubbing his temples. What do you want me to do? We've followed all the legal requirements. The eminent domain claim is solid. Accelerate the timeline, Lawson suggested. Move up the preliminary work, surveying, soil testing, that sort of thing. Get equipment on site. Create a sense of inevitability. That might just inflame the situation, or it might make these Amish folks realize resistance is futile, Lawson countered. Sometimes you need to show strength early. He finished his whiskey and set the glass down firmly. We're not just talking about the distribution hub anymore, Doug. There's the tech campus planned for Phase 2, the retail development for Phase 3. All told, we're looking at a 15-year development cycle worth billions. Do you really want to let a few farmers in horse-drawn buggies derail that? Kane considered this. His financial interest in the project, carefully hidden through various legal structures, represented his retirement plan. A golden parachute that would finally allow him to leave behind the tedium of local politics for a life of comfort. And Lawson was right. The longer this dragged on, the more likely someone might start asking inconvenient questions about his multiple roles in the deal. I'll arrange for the survey teams to start next week, he decided. And I'll have the county post the official eviction notices earlier than planned. Sometimes a firm deadline focuses the mind. Lawson nodded, satisfied. Good. Show them we mean business. He rose to leave, then paused. And Doug, keep an eye on that reporter. If she starts digging too deep, find a way to distract her. Everyone has something they don't want exposed. After Lawson departed, Kane remained at his desk, staring out at the city lights. He had worked too hard, compromised too much to let this opportunity slip away. If accelerating the timeline created hardship for the Amish, so be it. Progress had its price, and someone always had to pay it. Dawn broke over New Hope, painting the eastern sky with streaks of gold and pink. Jacob stood in his doorway, watching as the sun's first rays touched the fields and buildings of the village. He had slept poorly, his mind churning with thoughts of the coming meeting. Inside, his wife Rebecca moved quietly about the kitchen preparing breakfast. 5 of their 7 children still lived at home, ranging from 23-year-old Eli to 6-year-old Anna. The older ones would already be tending to morning chores, feeding animals, collecting eggs, preparing for the day's work. Jacob's life had followed the rhythms established by generations before him, the seasonal cycles of planting and harvest, the daily patterns of work and rest, the communal gatherings for worship and fellowship. These rhythms had always provided a sense of security, of belonging to something larger than himself. Now, for the first time, he felt those patterns threatened, not just by the physical loss of their land, but by his own growing doubt about how to respond. The appearance of Elon Musk seemed almost providential, yet accepting help from such a source went against everything the elders had taught. You're troubled, Rebecca said softly, coming to stand beside him. After 26 years of marriage, she could read his moods as easily as the weather. The elders have agreed to hear what the Englishman has to say, Jacob replied. Brother Samuel fears it will lead us away from our ways. Rebecca was silent for a moment, her hands folded in her apron. What does your heart tell you? Jacob looked at her, surprised by the question. Rebecca had always been quietly supportive, never questioning the community's decisions. My heart is divided, he admitted. I believe we must fight to keep our home, but I fear what that fight might cost us. She nodded slowly. When my father built this house, he told me something I've never forgotten. He said, "A home is not just walls and a roof. It's the memories we create within it, the values we practice there. Whatever happens, Jacob, those things remain." Her quiet wisdom steadied him, as it had so many times before. "Thank you," he said simply. As his family gathered for breakfast, Jacob found himself studying their faces. Eli, serious and responsible, 14-year-old twins, Sarah and Hannah, already skilled in the domestic arts, 10-year-old Matthew, who showed a natural aptitude for working with horses, and little Anna, still innocent of the threats to their way of life. Would they remember New Hope if they were forced to leave? Would they pass down stories of this place to their own children? Or would the disruption weaken their connection to the traditions that had sustained their family for generations? The questions had no easy answers. But as Jacob bowed his head for the morning prayer, he felt a renewed determination to at least hear what Elon Musk proposed. If there was a way to preserve both their land and their values, he owed it to his children to consider it, regardless of how unconventional the source might be. Elon spent the morning with his team in a conference room at the small hotel where they had taken rooms. Spread across the table were maps, legal documents, and technical specifications, as engineers and lawyers debated various approaches to the New Hope situation. "The key is finding a solution that satisfies multiple objectives simultaneously," Elon said, pacing as he often did when working through a problem. "It needs to create legal protection for the Amish land. It needs to respect their cultural values and traditions. And ideally, it should be something Kane and his developers can't easily challenge or override." "What about historical preservation?" suggested one of the lawyers. "If we can get New Hope designated as a historical site, the process would take too long," another countered. "They have weeks, not months or years. And it might create restrictions the Amish themselves wouldn't welcome," Elon added. "They're not a tourist attraction to be preserved in amber." One of the engineers, a young woman who had been quietly studying the maps, spoke up. "What about a renewable energy demonstration project?" Elon turned to her. "Go on. The Amish already live largely off-grid, right? What if we created a legal framework that designated New Hope as a sustainable living research site, a place where traditional practices are studied for their environmental benefits?" "Federal protection for environmental research areas is strong," one of the lawyers acknowledged. "And if we could demonstrate significant carbon reduction compared to conventional communities." Elon's eyes lit up with interest. "That has potential. The Amish use minimal fossil fuels, produce much of their own food, practice sustainable forestry and agriculture." He was warming to the idea. "We could install monitoring systems that are completely passive, no interference with their lifestyle, just collecting data on things like carbon sequestration in their woodlots, water quality in their streams. And if we added some minimal solar infrastructure, nothing obtrusive," the engineer continued, "it could qualify as a renewable energy research site," Elon finished, "which would add another layer of protection." He nodded appreciatively. "This could work. It aligns with our company values. It creates meaningful legal barriers to development, and it could actually benefit the Amish by creating a buffer around their community. The question is whether they'll accept even this much outside involvement," one of the team members pointed out. Elon's expression grew thoughtful. "That depends on how we present it. This isn't about changing their way of life. It's about recognizing the value in what they already do." He glanced at his watch. "We should head to New Hope. I want to walk the land before meeting with the elders. Seeing the actual site might suggest additional ideas." As they gathered their materials, Elon picked up the metal bracket that had started this unusual journey. Jacob Fisher's craftsmanship had caught his attention, but what kept him engaged was something deeper, a sense that in the collision between tradition and progress, there were important lessons for both sides. The elders gathered in Brother Samuel's barn shortly after midday. Jacob stood near the door watching as Elon's vehicles approached along the dusty road. Whatever happened in the next few hours would shape the future of New Hope, for better or worse. "Remember," Brother Samuel said quietly, We listen only. We make no commitments without prayer and consideration. Jacob nodded, though inwardly he hoped that the elders' minds weren't already closed to whatever Elon might propose. As unconventional as the situation was, he couldn't shake the feeling that this unexpected alliance might be their village's best, perhaps only, hope for survival. As the sleek vehicles came to a stop and Elon emerged, Jacob stepped forward to meet him, standing between two worlds that were about to collide in ways none of them could fully predict. The meeting between Elon Musk and the Amish elders lasted nearly 3 hours. Under the weathered beams of Brother Samuel's barn, Elon presented his vision for protecting New Hope while respecting its traditions. When he finished, Brother Samuel promised a response by the next day. As Elon and his team departed, a county sheriff's vehicle arrived. Deputy Collins stepped out holding an official envelope. "Mr. Fisher," the deputy said, his discomfort evident, "I have papers to serve to you and every household in New Hope." Jacob accepted the envelope with a sense of foreboding. "What is this, Deputy Collins?" "Eviction notice," Collins replied grimly. "Mayor Kane expedited the process. You all have 72 hours to vacate." 72 hours, Elon interjected. "That's impossible. The original timeline gave them 90 days. The deputy shrugged helplessly. The mayor cited some emergency provision about economic development zones. It's all legal according to the county attorney. As the deputy left, Elon turned to Jacob. "This changes things. We don't have the luxury of time anymore." The elders emerged from the barn, having witnessed the exchange. Brother Samuel approached, his face grave. Jacob handed him the eviction notice. 3 days to destroy 200 years of history, Samuel said quietly. Elon stepped forward. "If I may, Brother Samuel, I believe we can fight this, but we will need your community's cooperation, and we'll need it now. What would you have us do?" "First, don't acknowledge the eviction notices," Elon advised. "My lawyers will file an emergency injunction today. Second, allow us to begin implementing the environmental research designation immediately." Brother Samuel looked to the other elders. "We have not yet decided if your plan aligns with our ways." "With respect," Jacob interjected, surprising himself with his boldness, "we may not have the luxury of lengthy deliberation. If we do nothing, in 3 days we will be scattered, our homes bulldozed, our community destroyed. Instead of the rebuke Jacob expected, Brother Samuel simply asked, "What does your heart tell you, Jacob?" "That protecting what God has entrusted to us is not rebellion," Jacob replied. "It is stewardship. We would not stand idle if fire threatened our homes, or flood menaced our fields. Why should we yield to this threat without resistance?" After a moment of silence, Elder Jeremiah Lapp spoke up. "Jacob speaks truth. Our ways teach peace, not surrender. If Mr. Musk's plan allows us to protect our homes without violence or pride, perhaps we should consider it." Brother Samuel turned to Elon. "Begin your legal challenge, Mr. Musk. The elders will convene this evening to pray and discuss your proposal." Sarah Mitchell raced to complete her exposé before her editor's deadline. The Lancaster Daily News had elevated her investigation into Mayor Kane's dealings to the front page. "Kane's office is threatening a lawsuit," her editor called from across the newsroom. "Tell them I'll be happy to discuss my sources when the mayor explains why his brother-in-law's environmental firm was paid triple the going rate for the impact study on New Hope," Sarah replied without looking up from her screen. Her phone vibrated with a text from an unknown number. New evidence. "Meet me at the West Side Diner in 30 minutes. Come alone. A friend in the mayor's office." At the diner, Sarah found Melissa Harmon, Kane's executive assistant. "Why would you want to talk to me?" Sarah asked. Melissa pushed an envelope across the table. "Because what he's doing to those people is wrong, and because he's throwing me under the bus to save himself." Inside were copies of documents with inconsistent signatures, email printouts showing Kane's directives to circumvent proper procedures, and a memo outlining how to create a paper trail that would implicate Melissa rather than the mayor. "With these records, we might be able to get the eviction notices invalidated," Sarah said. Do what you need to do, Melissa replied. Just remember where they came from when the story breaks. In Jacob's workshop, Elon had established a command center for Operation New Hope. Engineers set up laptops, lawyers made urgent phone calls, and a satellite internet connection had been established. The environmental impact survey is our strongest angle, Elon told his legal team. If we can prove it was compromised by conflicts of interest, we might get a temporary restraining order. One of the attorneys shook her head. That approach requires evidence we don't have yet. I'm working with a journalist who's uncovering those connections, Elon replied. Shortly before midnight, Jacob's son, Eli, arrived with urgent news. Bulldozers and equipment are being moved to the edge of New Hope tonight. They're planning to begin clearing land at dawn. Elon turned to his legal team. File everything we have right now. Wake up judges if necessary. Even with expedited filings, we're looking at hours before any judge will rule, one lawyer warned. Then we need a different approach, Elon said. Something that physically prevents them from beginning work until legal protections can take effect. He turned to Jacob. How quickly can you mobilize your community? Dawn broke over New Hope with an orange glow. At the eastern edge of the community, heavy machinery stood ready to begin destruction. The site foreman checked his watch. 20 minutes. Make sure everything's fueled up and ready to go. A worker approached him, pointing toward the access road. Sir, you should see this. Coming toward them was the entire population of New Hope, led by the elders. Behind them came Elon Musk and his team, along with news crews from multiple organizations. They weren't protesting. They were planting trees. Every few feet along the boundary line, Amish men dug small holes. Women and children followed, placing saplings into the earth. Each tree received a small wooden marker and was logged by one of Elon's team members with GPS coordinates. Jacob worked alongside brother Samuel. Both men focused intently on the task. When they reached the line of construction equipment, they continued their work, planting saplings directly in the path the bulldozers would need to travel. The foreman approached. What is this? You can't be here. Elon stepped forward, a document in hand. This is notification that these trees are part of a federally registered environmental research project. Destruction of research specimens carries significant penalties under federal environmental protection statutes. The foreman scanned the document uncertainly. This looks official, but I have orders. Your orders were based on eviction notices that have been challenged in court. Elon continued. A judge is reviewing evidence of procedural violations. I would advise against beginning work until that ruling is delivered. The foreman looked from the document to the Amish families continuing their planting, to the news cameras recording everything. I need to call this in, he decided. Jacob paused in his work, observing the scene. What had begun as Elon's strategic maneuver had transformed into something profound for the community. The act of planting had united them in peaceful resistance that aligned with their values. Brother Samuel caught Jacob's eye. This is good work, he said quietly. Work worthy of our calling. Their exchange was interrupted by an approaching black car. Henry Lawson emerged, surveying the scene with evident surprise. After dismissing the foreman, Lawson approached Elon and Jacob. Mr. Musk, this is an unexpected development. Mr. Lawson, I admire your company's innovations. It's unfortunate we're meeting under these circumstances. Lawson studied the ongoing planting. An environmental research designation? Creative? And legitimate, Elon countered. The Amish approach to agriculture has valuable lessons for sustainable development. Kane is finished, Lawson said abruptly. Mitchell's story broke an hour ago. The governor has already called for an investigation. And your project? Elon asked. We're reassessing our options. The economics of this location have become less favorable. Lawson glanced at Jacob. I won't pretend I understand your way of life, Mr. Fisher. But I can recognize when fighting a battle becomes counterproductive for all involved. After Lawson departed, Sarah approached with breaking news. A county judge has issued a temporary Restraining order blocking all eviction proceedings against New Hope residents. Pending review of procedural violations. Relief washed over Jacob. He turned to find Brother Samuel standing nearby. "This is but a first step," the elder cautioned. "The English world moves in ways we cannot predict." "Yes," Jacob agreed. "But today we plant trees. Tomorrow God will show us the next step." Brother Samuel nodded, newfound respect in his eyes. "In protecting our home, you have honored our ways, not abandoned them." As the community continued planting, each sapling became a declaration of their intention to remain rooted in the land they loved, and a promise that they would not be easily uprooted. The temporary restraining order had bought New Hope 3 days of precious time. For 72 hours, the village had experienced a curious mix of tension and activity as Elon's team worked feverishly alongside the Amish community. Throughout those 3 days, Jacob had witnessed something he never thought possible: a harmonious blending of two worlds that had always seemed irreconcilable. But now, as dawn broke on the 4th day, the restraining order had expired. The morning mist hung low over the fields, shrouding the village in an ethereal glow. Jacob stood at the edge of his property, watching as vehicles began to gather on the access road leading to New Hope. Police cruisers, construction equipment, news vans. The battle was reaching its climax. "It's time," Elon said, approaching from behind. Despite having worked through most of the night, he showed remarkable energy. "Are you ready?" Jacob nodded. In truth, the past 3 days had transformed him in ways he couldn't have imagined. He had stepped into a leadership role within his community, becoming a bridge between their traditional ways and the modern world that now seemed both adversary and ally. "The others are gathering at the site," Jacob replied. "Brother Samuel leads them in prayer." Elon nodded respectfully. "Good. We'll need all the help we can get, spiritual included." He glanced toward the approaching vehicles. Kane didn't waste any time once the restraining order expired. "He fears what we've built," Jacob observed. "With good reason," Elon replied, a hint of satisfaction in his voice. "Let's go show him why." Together they walked toward what had become the focal point of their efforts, a clearing at the center of New Hope where the community's shared pasture land met their woodlots. What had been an empty field 3 days ago had transformed into something remarkable. The Amish community stood in a large semicircle around the site, women in their modest dresses and white prayer caps, men in traditional black attire, children quiet but wide-eyed at the unusual proceedings. Brother Samuel stood at the front, his weathered hands clasped before him, his expression solemn but no longer resistant. At the center of attention was a structure that perfectly embodied the unusual alliance that had formed. At first glance, it appeared like a traditional Amish barn, hand-hewn timber frame, raised in the old way with community effort. Its design, harmonious with the surrounding buildings. But integrated within and around this structure were elements that came from Elon's world. Solar panels formed a portion of the roof, designed to blend with the traditional wooden shingles. A small wind turbine, crafted with wooden blades carved by Amish woodworkers based on Tesla engineers' specifications, turned slowly in the morning breeze. And buried beneath, invisible but essential, was an advanced battery storage system connected to a monitoring station that would record and transmit data without disrupting the community's daily life. It was a power system unlike any other, combining cutting-edge technology with traditional craftsmanship, designed to operate completely off-grid while generating more than enough electricity to qualify the area as a renewable energy research site under federal environmental regulations. 3 days, Elon murmured, admiring the structure. It would have taken months anywhere else. "Many hands make light work," Jacob replied with simple wisdom. "When our people build together, we can raise a barn in a day." This was no different. Rumble of approaching vehicles grew louder. 3 police cruisers pulled up, followed by 2 black SUVs. Mayor Kane emerged from the first, his face set in cold determination. Behind him came bulldozers and construction equipment, poised to begin demolition once given the order. Kane strode toward them, flanked by police officers. Behind him, Sarah Mitchell arrived with a camera crew, broadcasting the confrontation, live to an audience that had grown from local to national over the past days. "The restraining order has expired, Mr. Musk," Kane announced, loud enough for the cameras to pick up. "These people have been legally evicted. They're trespassing on land designated for development." Elon stepped forward, completely composed. "Good morning, Mayor Kane. You're just in time for our ribbon-cutting ceremony." Kane's eyes narrowed suspiciously. "What are you talking about?" "Allow me to present the New Hope Sustainable Energy Research Station," Elon announced, gesturing toward the structure behind him. "A fully functional off-grid power system that combines traditional craftsmanship with cutting-edge renewable technology." Kane's expression flickered between confusion and anger. "This changes nothing. The development plans are approved. The land has been seized through legal eminent domain." "Actually," Elon countered, "it changes everything." He nodded to one of his lawyers, who stepped forward with an official-looking document. "This is notification of the site's designation as a federal environmental research preserve," the lawyer explained. "As of yesterday afternoon, the Department of Energy has officially recognized the New Hope Sustainable Energy Research Station as a site of significant scientific interest for its innovative approach to carbon-neutral living." Kane snatched the paper, scanning it with increasing alarm. "This is a stunt, a last-minute trick that won't hold up." "It's completely legitimate," Elon replied calmly. "The research being conducted here will provide valuable data on sustainable living practices that could help address climate change. The Amish community has agreed to allow passive monitoring of their traditional methods, which preliminary studies suggest may sequester more carbon than conventional modern approaches." As Kane fumed, Jacob noticed a second black SUV arriving. Henry Lawson emerged, surveying the scene with an unreadable expression. "Furthermore," Elon continued, "any attempt to disrupt a federally designated research site would trigger additional legal protections and investigations." He gestured toward the news crews. "All broadcast live, of course." Kane turned to the police officers. "This doesn't change the eviction order. These people need to leave now, and this illegal structure needs to be demolished." The officers exchanged uncomfortable glances, clearly reluctant to forcibly remove peaceful Amish families under the glare of national media attention. "Mayor Kane," Sarah Mitchell called out, stepping forward with her microphone. "Would you care to comment on the FBI investigation into your financial dealings with Horizon Partners, or the evidence suggesting you falsified documents to accelerate these eviction notices?" Kane's face paled. "No comment. This is about enforcing legally approved development plans." "Is it?" Sarah pressed. "Because we've obtained documents showing you personally purchased land surrounding New Hope through shell companies before the development was announced, apparently using insider information for private gain. Would you like to address those allegations?" The crowd murmured as Kane's composure visibly cracked. "This is a smear campaign. I've done nothing wrong." "That's not what your former assistant Melissa Harmon says," Sarah countered. "She's currently meeting with federal investigators, providing detailed records of your activities." As Kane struggled for a response, Lawson approached, his expression grim. "Doug, we need to talk." "Not now, Hank," Kane hissed. "Yes, now." Lawson's tone left no room for argument. He turned to face the cameras directly. "As CEO of Horizon Partners, I want to make a statement. In light of recent developments, we are withdrawing from the Lancaster County Distribution Hub project, effective immediately." A collective gasp rose from the assembled crowd. Kane stared at Lawson in disbelief. "You can't do that. We have contracts. Contracts that are now void due to material misrepresentations on your part," Lawson replied coldly. "Our legal team has reviewed Ms. Mitchell's evidence. We will not be associated with a project tainted by corruption." He turned to address the Amish community and Elon. "Horizon Partners apologizes for any distress caused to the New Hope community. We will be exploring more appropriate locations for our facility, ones that don't require displacing established communities." Kane's face contorted with rage. "You're throwing me under the bus to save yourself." "I'm cutting my losses," Lawson corrected. "Something you should consider as well." He nodded toward the FBI agents who had just arrived in yet another vehicle. "I believe those gentlemen are here for you, not me." As Kane was led away by federal agents, the tension that had gripped New Hope for weeks began to dissolve. The construction workers, already uncomfortable with their assignment, began powering down their equipment. The police officers, relieved to avoid a confrontation, stepped back. Brother Samuel approached Jacob and Elon, his eyes taking in the remarkable structure they had created together. "When you first came to us, Mr. Musk, I feared you represented a threat to our ways. I see now that I was mistaken." Elon shook his head. "Your caution was well-founded, Brother Samuel. The outside world hasn't always respected communities like yours. Yet you found a way to help us that honors our traditions," the elder observed, gazing at the barn-like structure with its seamlessly integrated technology. "Jacob deserves much of the credit," Elon replied. "He helped us understand what would work for New Hope, what would protect you without changing you." Jacob felt a flush of pride at these words, though he quickly tempered it with humility. "I merely spoke what was in my heart. Sometimes that is the most difficult thing to do," Brother Samuel said, placing a hand on Jacob's shoulder. "You have helped preserve our community, Jacob Fisher. You found a path that maintained our principles while still standing firm against injustice." As the morning progressed, the mood in New Hope transformed from tense anticipation to quiet celebration. The bulldozers and police departed, replaced by curious visitors drawn by the news coverage. Elon's team began explaining the technical aspects of the sustainable energy system to interested officials and reporters, while the Amish community gradually returned to their daily routines, their way of life preserved. Sarah Mitchell approached Jacob as he stood watching the activity around the research station. "You've made history today," she said. "Not many stories have endings this satisfying." "It is not an ending," Jacob replied thoughtfully. "It is a new beginning. For New Hope, and perhaps for others like us who wish to maintain our traditions in a changing world." "What happens next?" Sarah asked. "Will your community continue working with Musk's team on this research project?" Jacob nodded. "In our own way, yes. The monitoring systems require little from us beyond living as we always have. And if our practices can teach something valuable to the outside world, that seems a worthy purpose." Sarah smiled. "I think you've already taught something valuable. You've shown that standing up for what matters doesn't always mean compromising who you are." As Sarah left to prepare her final report on the New Hope story, Jacob sought out Elon, who was discussing technical details with his engineers near the power station. "A moment of your time?" Jacob requested. Elon nodded, stepping away from his team. "Of course. My people wish to thank you properly," Jacob said. "We will have a community meal this evening. It would honor us if you would attend." "I'd be delighted," Elon replied. "Though I should warn you, my eating habits are rather unusual." A smile touched Jacob's lips. "I believe we have proven that differences need not be obstacles." Elon laughed. "Well said." His expression grew more serious. "You know, when I first saw your metalwork in those old Tesla components, I never imagined where it would lead. There's something profound in that connection. How your craftsmanship literally helped build my company's first vehicles. And now my technology is helping protect your community." "God works in ways we cannot predict," Jacob observed. "What seems like chance may be part of a larger design." Elon nodded thoughtfully. "I'm not sure I'd use those terms, but I can't deny the remarkable symmetry of it all." He gazed at the sustainable energy station. "This structure embodies something important, the idea that innovation doesn't have to destroy tradition. That sometimes the most revolutionary approach is one that honors the past while creating something new." As they spoke, Jacob noticed his youngest daughter, Anna, approaching shyly. She carried something in her small hands, a wooden carving of the renewable energy station they had built. "My daughter wishes to give you something," Jacob explained, as Anna presented her gift to Elon. Elon accepted the carving with genuine appreciation, studying the detailed workmanship. "This is beautiful. Did you make this yourself?" Anna nodded, finding her voice. Father helped with the difficult parts. She has her father's gift for craftsmanship, Jacob said proudly. Though she is young, to show such skill. Elon knelt to Anna's level. Thank you, Anna. I'll keep this in my office to remind me of New Hope and what we accomplished here. The little girl smiled, then hurried back to where her mother stood watching. Elon rose, still admiring the carving. Your daughter's generation will grow up in a New Hope that remains true to its values, he observed. That's no small achievement. Jacob nodded, looking out over the village. The fields where his people had worked for generations. The workshops where crafts were passed down from father to son, mother to daughter. The homes where families gathered in the evening by lamplight. All of it preserved, not by retreating from the challenges of the modern world, but by finding an unexpected ally within it. What you have given us cannot be measured, Jacob said quietly. Not just our homes, but our future. What we've given each other, Elon corrected. This project has changed my thinking too. There's wisdom in your community's approach to technology, being selective, intentional about what you adopt based on how it affects your core values. He smiled slightly. Silicon Valley could learn something from that perspective. As the day progressed, the FBI expanded its investigation, with agents interviewing various officials connected to Kane's administration. The county commissioners held an emergency session, formally rescinding all eviction notices against New Hope residents. And national news coverage highlighted the unusual alliance between an Amish village and a tech billionaire as a model for resolving conflicts between tradition and progress. By evening, with the immediate crisis resolved, the Amish community gathered for a celebratory meal in the traditional manner. Long tables set up outdoors, laden with homegrown and home-cooked food. Elon and his team were welcomed as honored guests, the previous suspicion replaced by genuine, if still reserved, acceptance. As lanterns were lit against the gathering dusk, Jacob found himself seated beside Brother Samuel. The elder's face showed the fatigue of recent days, but also a profound contentment. I doubted your path, Samuel admitted quietly. I feared that in seeking to save our land we might lose something more precious, our commitment to our ways. I feared the same, Jacob confessed. Yet here we are, Samuel observed. Still Amish, still faithful to our traditions, yet changed in ways I had not anticipated. He looked toward where Elon sat, engaged in animated conversation with several community members. Not all change is corruption, it seems. Sometimes it is growth. Jacob considered these words carefully. Perhaps that is the lesson in all this. That preserving our ways sometimes requires new approaches. That standing firm is not the same as standing still. Brother Samuel nodded slowly. You have grown wise, Jacob Fisher. When my time as elder ends, the community will need new leadership. Leadership that understands both our traditions and the world beyond. The implication was clear, though neither man acknowledged it directly. Instead, they sat in companionable silence, watching as their community celebrated not just their victory, but the dawning recognition that they had found a way to remain true to themselves while still engaging with the challenges of a changing world. As night fell fully over New Hope, the stars emerged above the peaceful village, the same stars that had guided Jacob's ancestors to this land generations ago. But now those stars shone down on something new. A community that had discovered its strength not in isolation, but in finding common ground with an unlikely ally. In the soft glow of lantern light, Jacob watched as his children played with others their age, their laughter carrying across the gathering. They would inherit a new hope that was both unchanged and transformed, a community that had found a way to stand its ground without losing its soul. And in that moment, Jacob knew with absolute certainty that they had won something far greater than mere preservation. They had charted a path forward that honored the past while embracing the future. A victory not just for New Hope, but perhaps for all who sought to maintain their values in a rapidly changing world. 2 weeks after the standoff at New Hope, Lancaster County was still abuzz with the aftermath. The local newspaper's headline that morning said it all. Kane resigns, disgraced mayor steps down amid federal investigation. Jacob Fisher stood in his workshop, the morning light streaming through the windows as he read the article. Sarah Mitchell's byline topped the piece, which detailed Kane's formal resignation and the sweeping changes already taking place in local government. An interim mayor had been appointed, one who had publicly committed to better relations with the Amish communities. The sound of hoofbeats drew Jacob's attention. Through the window, he watched as his eldest son Eli arrived in their family buggy, returning from a trip to town for supplies. But there was a passenger with him, Elon Musk, who would be departing later that day for California. Setting aside the newspaper, Jacob stepped outside to greet them. The mid-spring air carried the scent of freshly turned earth and apple blossoms, a reminder of life's continuity despite the tumultuous events of recent weeks. "I hope you don't mind the intrusion," Elon said as he climbed down from the buggy. "Eli mentioned he was heading this way and I wanted a chance to say goodbye properly." "You are always welcome here," Jacob replied, genuinely meaning it. The man who had once seemed an embodiment of everything contrary to the Amish way had become improbably a friend and ally. "How are the final arrangements for the research station?" "All secured," Elon confirmed as they walked toward the workshop. "The Department of Energy has confirmed its official designation as a renewable energy research site, with funding guaranteed for the next decade. The monitoring systems are fully operational, but completely unobtrusive, as promised." Inside the EI workshop, Jacob gestured for Elon to take a seat at his work table. The space had returned to its original purpose, the temporary command center dismantled, leaving only the tools and materials of Jacob's craft. "The first data readings are fascinating," Elon continued. "Your community's carbon footprint is less than 1/10 that of the average American household. The sustainable forestry practices alone sequester more carbon than we initially estimated." Jacob nodded, though such technical details remained somewhat foreign to him. What mattered was that New Hope had been preserved, its way of life protected. "And the legal protections are secure?" "Absolutely," Elon assured him. "The federal designation creates multiple layers of protection. No local or state authority can override it. New Hope is safe from development for the foreseeable future." Comfortable silence fell between them, two men from vastly different worlds who had found unexpected common ground. "The county commissioner called New Hope a model of sustainable living in yesterday's council meeting," Jacob said finally. "It seems our way of life, which many have seen as outdated, now appears visionary to some." Elon smiled. "There's profound irony there. The Amish have been practicing sustainable living for centuries while the rest of us are just beginning to recognize its importance." He glanced around the workshop. "What will change for your community now? Will you return entirely to your traditional separation from the outside world?" Jacob considered the question carefully. It touched on discussions that had been occurring among the elders since the crisis ended. "Our ways remain our ways," he said. "We will continue to live, simply to work with our hands to keep ourselves apart from the technologies that would change us." He paused. "But perhaps we will not be quite so invisible as before." "What do you mean?" "The elders have agreed that the knowledge gained from studying our practices may benefit others. If our traditional methods can teach something valuable about living in harmony with the land, then sharing that knowledge in our own way seems consistent with our values." Elon looked surprised. "That's a significant change in perspective." "Not a change in our foundations," Jacob clarified, "but perhaps in our understanding of how to apply them. Brother Samuel put it well. To share wisdom is not pride if the purpose is to help others, not glorify ourselves." Through the workshop window, they could see several Tesla engineers making final adjustments to the monitoring equipment at the research station. The structure remained a remarkable blend of old and new, traditional timber framing and craftsmanship, supporting cutting-edge renewable technology. "Researchers from 3 universities have already requested permission to study your agricultural methods," Elon mentioned. "The sustainable farming practices in particular have attracted attention." Jacob nodded. "The elders will consider each request carefully, Those who come with respect and genuine interest will be welcomed within limits. And what about you, Jacob? Elon asked. How has all this changed you? The question gave Jacob pause. He had been so focused on preserving his community that he had given little thought to how the experience had transformed him personally. I have always been a craftsman, he said finally. One who shapes metal according to its nature and purpose. Perhaps now I see that communities too can be shaped, not by forcing them into forms that violate their essence, but by understanding their true strength and purpose. He rose and moved to a shelf near his forge, retrieving something wrapped in simple cloth. I have something for you before you depart. A gift to mark our unlikely friendship. Elon accepted the bundle, carefully unwrapping it to reveal a hand-forged iron plaque. The metalwork was exquisite, showcasing Jacob's mastery of his craft. Inscribed in the center were the words, "The best way to predict the future is to build it." It's beautiful, Elon said, genuinely moved as he traced the letters with his fingertips. It is an old saying among our people, Jacob explained. Though, I suspect it means something different to you than to us. Elon smiled. Perhaps not as different as you might think. We both believe in creating rather than merely consuming, in building things that last. He looked up from the plaque. Thank you, Jacob, I'll treasure this. Before Jacob could respond, the workshop door opened as Sarah Mitchell arrived, notebook in hand. Over the past weeks, she had become a familiar presence in New Hope, documenting the aftermath of the conflict with sensitivity and insight. I'm not interrupting, am I? She asked, noting the moment between the two men. Not at all, Jacob assured her. We were just discussing the future of New Hope. Sarah's expression brightened. That's actually why I'm here. My editor has approved a long-form feature about the partnership between your community and Tesla. He wants to call it Tradition Meets Innovation, a blueprint for sustainable communities. Elon raised an eyebrow. Catchy title. The story has resonated far beyond Lancaster County, Sarah continued. We've had inquiries from national publications, even international ones. People are fascinated by the idea of ancient wisdom and cutting-edge technology finding common ground. Jacob felt a momentary unease. The Amish had always avoided publicity, preferring to live quietly apart from the world's attention. Yet he recognized that this situation was unprecedented. What would this feature involve? He asked cautiously. Respectful documentation of the collaboration, Sarah replied. How the research station was designed to honor Amish traditions while incorporating sustainable technology, the environmental benefits of your community's practices, the legal framework that now protects New Hope. She paused, sensing Jacob's hesitation. I understand your community's desire for privacy. Any coverage would be on your terms, focusing on the principles rather than individuals. Jacob nodded, appreciating her understanding. I will discuss it with the elders. There may be value in sharing this story, if told properly. As Sarah made notes, Brother Samuel appeared at the workshop door. At 73, the elder moved, more slowly these days, but his presence still commanded natural respect. Am I interrupting? He asked. Not at all, Jacob replied. Please join us. Brother Samuel entered, nodding respectfully to Elon and Sarah. I came to inform you that the Council of Elders has reached a decision regarding the research proposals. Jacob waited expectantly. This would be significant for New Hope's future relationship with the outside world. We will permit limited research, partnerships, Samuel announced. Those that respect our ways and focus on learning from our practices rather than changing them. Each proposal will be reviewed individually and clear boundaries established. It was a measured response, typical of the careful deliberation the Amish applied to all significant decisions. Yet it also represented a subtle but profound shift, a willingness to engage with the outside world on terms consistent with their values. A wise decision, Elon commented. Your community has much to teach about sustainable living. Sharing that knowledge on your own terms could benefit many. Brother Samuel's eyes held a hint of amusement. When you first arrived here, Mr. Musk, I feared you represented a threat to our ways. Now you speak of wisdom in our traditions. It seems we have all learned something in these weeks. Indeed, Elon agreed. I came thinking I could help save your community with technology and legal strategies. I didn't expect to gain new perspectives on my own work in the process. What perspectives might those be? Samuel asked, genuinely curious. Elon considered the question seriously. The importance of intention in innovation. You adopt technologies selectively based on whether they support or undermine your core values. There's profound wisdom in that approach, one that Silicon Valley could learn from. Samuel nodded thoughtfully. All tools shape their users, even as users shape their tools. This is why we choose our tools with care. Before they could continue this philosophical exchange, Jacob's wife, Rebecca, appeared with a group of children from the community. The youngest held a basket of freshly baked bread and homemade preserves, a traditional Amish farewell gift for a departing friend. The children wished to say goodbye to Mr. Musk, Rebecca explained, her eyes twinkling with gentle humor at this unusual circumstance. Jacob watched as Elon accepted the basket from the children, thanking them with genuine warmth. It was a scene he could never have imagined weeks ago, the tech billionaire whose companies were reshaping the modern world, being honored with a traditional Amish farewell. You must bring your children to visit someday, Jacob's youngest daughter Anna said innocently, unaware of how such a visit would be largely unprecedented. Jacob was about to gently correct her when Elon replied, I'd like that very much, Anna, perhaps when they're a bit older. The sincerity in his voice suggested he meant it, that this unlikely connection between vastly different worlds might continue in some form. As the morning progressed, more community members came to bid farewell. To Elon and his team, what had begun as wariness had evolved into a cautious but genuine respect. The Tesla engineers who had worked alongside Amish craftsmen exchanged parting words and handshakes, each having gained appreciation for the other's skills and perspective. Near midday, as Elon prepared to depart for the airport, he and Jacob walked together through New Hope. The village appeared largely unchanged. Horses and buggies moved along the roads. Farmers worked in the fields. Women tended gardens and hung laundry to dry in the spring breeze. Yet subtle signs of transformation were visible to those who knew where to look. The research station with its blend of traditional and modern elements, university researchers respectfully observing agricultural practices, a small group of journalists speaking with Brother Samuel about the community's sustainable forestry methods. I expected you to be eager to return to tradition entirely, Elon remarked as they walked, to close the door that was temporarily opened during the crisis. Jacob shook his head. Progress and tradition were never enemies, only men make them so. What matters is not whether we embrace change, but whether that change serves or undermines what we hold most dear. They paused at the crest of a small hill that offered a view of New Hope spread out below them. From this vantage point, the village appeared timeless, a community living much as their ancestors had for generations. Yet it now existed within a new context, recognized for its environmental wisdom rather than dismissed as an anachronism. What will happen now? Elon asked. Now that the crisis is past and New Hope is secure? We will live as we have always lived, Jacob replied, working with our hands, raising our children in faith, caring for the land entrusted to us. He smiled, slightly, but perhaps with a clearer understanding of our place in the wider world, not set apart merely to preserve the past, but to demonstrate principles that may be valuable for the future. The distant sound of horses' hooves drew their attention. A group of Amish men were traveling by buggy toward the research station, where they would meet with environmental scientists to explain traditional crop rotation methods. It was a small but significant collaboration, knowledge sharing that respected boundaries while acknowledging common goals. The world will be watching New Hope now, Elon observed. You've become a symbol of something people are hungry for, a demonstration that traditional wisdom and modern challenges can find harmonious resolution. We did not seek this attention, Jacob acknowledged, but perhaps it serves a purpose beyond ourselves. As they returned to where Elon's car waited, they found Sarah Mitchell completing an interview with several community members. Her previous articles had brought her significant recognition, with offers from major publications. Yet she had chosen to remain with the Lancaster Daily News, committed to telling the continuing story of New Hope and the changes rippling through the county since Kane's downfall. The interim mayor is proposing a sustainable development initiative inspired by New Hope's example, she informed them. Encouraging green businesses, preserving farmland, creating incentives for renewable energy projects that respect local communities. Remarkable transformation, Elon commented. From trying to bulldoze tradition in the name of progress to learning from that tradition. Kane's replacement seems genuinely committed to a different approach, Sarah agreed. Several council members have even visited New Hope to learn about your sustainable practices. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Elon's driver, signaling that the time for departure had come. As final goodbyes were exchanged, Jacob walked Elon to his car. My team will continue to maintain the monitoring systems, Elon assured him. But they'll remain unobtrusive. The data collected will help quantify the environmental benefits of your practices, creating a scientific case for what you've known intuitively for generations. Jacob nodded. And perhaps bridge the gap between our world and yours, in ways that serve both. As Elon prepared to enter his vehicle, he paused, turning back to Jacob. You know, when I first saw your metalwork in those early Tesla components, I thought it was just an interesting coincidence. Now I can't help wondering if it was something more. A connection meant to bring these two worlds together at a moment, when both needed the other. Jacob smiled at the notion. God works in ways we cannot always understand. What seems like chance to some may be purpose unfolding. Elon hefted the iron plaque Jacob had given him. The best way to predict the future is to build it. Perhaps that's what we've done here, built something neither of us could have created alone. With a final handshake, Elon departed, his car moving slowly along the country road that led away from New Hope. Jacob watched until it disappeared from view, reflecting on the improbable alliance that had saved his community and opened unexpected doors to the future. As he walked back toward his workshop, Jacob passed the research station, where Amish farmers were demonstrating traditional plowing techniques to visiting agricultural scientists. The structure itself remained a perfect metaphor for what had been achieved. Traditional timber framing and craftsmanship, supporting cutting-edge renewable technology, each complementing the other rather than competing. Brother Samuel joined him, watching the interaction between community members and visitors with thoughtful eyes. We walk a careful path now, the elder observed, engaging with the world while remaining true to ourselves. It is not unlike the path our ancestors walked, Jacob replied. They too had to discern how to maintain their values while adapting to new circumstances. Samuel nodded, wisdom etched in the lines of his weathered face. The test of true principles is not whether they can be preserved in isolation, but whether they can remain vital when challenged. 3 months later, as summer ripened toward autumn, the changes set in motion during the crisis continued to unfold in unexpected ways. New Hope remained fundamentally unchanged in its daily rhythms and core practices. The Amish still rose before dawn, worked with horse in hand rather than machine, and gathered for worship in homes rather than churches. Their distinctive dress, language, and customs continued to set them apart from the surrounding society, yet subtle transformations were evident to those who looked closely. The research station had become an accepted part of community life, its passive monitoring systems gathering data that was already influencing sustainable development policies beyond Lancaster County. Limited educational exchanges brought respectful visitors to learn about traditional farming, forestry, and craftsmanship, always on terms that honored Amish values. Sarah Mitchell's series of articles had garnered national attention, even winning a prestigious journalism award. She had become something of an unofficial liaison between New Hope and the outside world, trusted for her accurate and sensitive reporting. Her most recent piece had documented how Amish agricultural practices were being studied by climate scientists for their carbon sequestration benefits. Jacob found himself in an unexpected role as well. While not formally recognized as an elder, his perspective was increasingly sought when questions arose about engaging with outside researchers or explaining community practices to visitors. His workshop had become a place where tradition and innovation met in pragmatic harmony, where hand-forged metalwork sometimes incorporated subtle design improvements suggested by engineering principles, without compromising traditional craftsmanship. On a warm September evening, Jacob sat on his porch with Rebecca, watching as their children completed the day's final chores. In the distance, the research station's small wind turbine turned lazily in the evening breeze, its wooden blades crafted by Amish woodworkers to specifications developed by Tesla engineers. Eli mentioned that the university people want to document your ironworking techniques, Rebecca said, her hands busy with mending. For their sustainable crafts program, Jacob nodded. Brother Samuel has approved it, as long as there are no photographs of people, only the work itself. Rebecca's needle paused. It's strange to think of our ways being studied like this, as something valuable rather than merely old-fashioned. Perhaps that is God's purpose in all that has happened, Jacob reflected, to remind both us and the English world that wisdom can flow in both directions, that the future need not destroy the past to move forward. A letter had arrived that morning from Elon Musk, delivered to the community's shared postal box. In it, he had shared that the data from New Hope was already influencing sustainable community designs in California, where developers were incorporating elements of Amish land management into new eco-conscious neighborhoods. The iron plaque Jacob had crafted now hung prominently in Elon's office, where it sparked conversations with visitors about the unlikely alliance that had produced the New Hope model. As twilight deepened into dusk, oil lamps were lit in homes. Throughout New Hope, their warm glow visible through windows. No electric lights shone except at the research station, where solar-powered LEDs illuminated monitoring equipment. The contrast embodied the delicate balance that had been achieved, traditional life continuing undisturbed, alongside carefully limited modern elements that served specific purposes without undermining community values. A horse and buggy passed. Along the road, the steady clip-clop of hooves punctuating the evening quiet. Inside rode a young Amish family, returning from visiting relatives. They passed the research station without a second glance, its presence now an accepted part of the landscape. The future they traveled toward would be shaped by the events of recent months, yet remain rooted in traditions centuries old. Jacob gazed up at the emerging stars, the same stars his ancestors had navigated by, the same stars that would guide future generations of his family. New Hope had been preserved not by rejecting all change, but by engaging with it selectively and purposefully, by discerning which adaptations threatened their fundamental values and which might actually strengthen them. The best way to predict the future is to build it. The words from the plaque he had crafted for Elon echoed in his mind. New Hope was building its future now, one that honored tradition while remaining open to the wisdom that could come from unexpected sources and unlikely allies. As darkness settled fully over the village, Jacob Fisher, blacksmith and bridge builder between worlds, offered a silent prayer of gratitude. For land preserved, for community strengthened, for lessons learned on both sides of a divide that had proven less insurmountable than once believed, and for the recognition that when tradition and progress meet in mutual respect, the result can be not conflict, but harmony, a future built together, stone by stone, hand by hand, guided by values that transcend both the past and the present. 1 year later, on a crisp autumn morning, Jacob stood at the edge of his property watching as a group of visitors toured the expanded research facility. What had begun as a desperate measure to save New Hope had evolved into something none of them had anticipated, a living laboratory where traditional practices and modern science found common ground. Universities had established partnerships with the community, documenting Amish farming methods that consumed a fraction of the resources used by industrial agriculture while maintaining soil health for generations. Environmental engineers studied the community's water management systems, which naturally filtered contaminants through constructed wetlands, designed generations before such concepts became mainstream science. The research station itself had expanded modestly, always with careful consideration for its impact on community life. Its design continued to honor Amish aesthetics while incorporating sustainable technology that remained invisible to casual observation. Most importantly, the knowledge exchange flowed in both directions. Scientists learning from centuries-old wisdom, while the community selectively adopted innovations that aligned with their values. "Father," Eli called, approaching with a letter in hand. "Another message from Mr. Musk." Jacob accepted the envelope, breaking the seal to find both a letter and a newspaper clipping. The article, from a major business publication, detailed how Tesla's newest sustainable community project in Arizona had incorporated design principles inspired by New Hope. The accompanying photograph showed a development that honored simplicity and function over ostentation, with shared spaces that encouraged community interaction rather than isolation. The letter itself was brief but meaningful. Jacob, the New Hope initiative launches next month. 15 communities across 5 countries, each adapting your principles to local conditions. Your plaque hangs in the planning center, reminding everyone that true sustainability isn't just about technology. It's about values that endure. I've enclosed something that might interest you. The material was developed for our Mars habitat designs, but I believe it could strengthen your traditional wooden spokes without changing their appearance or crafting methods. With respect and gratitude, Elon. A small sample of material accompanied the letter. Something that looked like traditional wood finish but incorporated advanced strengthening compounds. Jacob studied it thoughtfully, appreciating the gesture's symbolism as much as its practical application. It represented exactly the kind of selective adaptation the community had come to practice, adopting elements that preserved rather than undermined their essential nature. As Jacob tucked the letter away, he gazed across New Hope with quiet satisfaction. Horse-drawn buggies still traveled the roads. Children still played traditional games rather than staring at screens. Families still gathered by lamplight in the evenings. The fundamental character of their life remained intact. Yet something profound had shifted in their relationship with the outside world. Instead of being viewed as a quaint anachronism, New Hope had become a living example of principles increasingly recognized as vital to humanity's future. Community resilience, sustainable resource use, craftsmanship that created lasting value, rather than disposable consumption. Brother Samuel, now approaching his 75th year, joined Jacob at the property line. Despite his advanced age, the elder's eyes remained sharp, missing nothing as he surveyed the activity around the research station. "Our forefathers could never have imagined this," he observed. "Their descendants working alongside the English to share knowledge. Perhaps not in form," Jacob agreed, "but in principle. They left the old world seeking freedom to live according to their convictions. That hasn't changed." Samuel nodded slowly. "The English have a saying about old wine in new bottles. Perhaps we have found a way to preserve old wisdom in new circumstances." In the distance, Sarah Mitchell was interviewing a group of Amish farmers about their crop rotation methods. Her series on New Hope had expanded into a forthcoming book, documenting the community's practical approaches to sustainability. True to her word, she had maintained their privacy while sharing their principles with a wider audience hungry for alternatives to an increasingly unstable world. As the morning light strengthened, illuminating the patchwork of well-tended fields and woodlots that made up New Hope, Jacob reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. What had begun as a desperate fight for survival had transformed into something far more significant, a model for how different worldviews could find common ground in service of shared values. The iron plaque he had crafted for Elon now had a twin hanging in New Hope's small schoolhouse. "The best way to predict the future is to build it." The words reminded the community's children that they were not merely preserving the past, but actively creating a future, one that honored their traditions while engaging thoughtfully with a changing world. As Jacob turned back toward his workshop, he caught sight of his youngest daughter, Anna, now 7, helping a visiting researcher identify beneficial insects in their garden. The girl listened intently as the scientist explained each creature's role in the ecosystem, then solemnly shared what her grandmother had taught her about which bugs signaled healthy soil. In that simple exchange, the respected scientist learning from a child, the child confidently sharing traditional knowledge, Jacob saw the essence of what they had achieved. Not compromise that weakened both sides, but collaboration that strengthened each. Not isolation that fostered ignorance, but engagement that deepened understanding. Not resistance to all change, but discernment about which changes to embrace and which to reject. New Hope had found its future by remembering its past, by recognizing that tradition, properly understood, was not static preservation but dynamic continuity, a living heritage that could incorporate new elements without losing its essential character. As Jacob stepped into his workshop, he ran his hand along the tools that had been passed down through generations of Fisher blacksmiths. Tomorrow he would begin crafting a new piece, an ornate weather vane commissioned for the research station's roof. The design would incorporate traditional Amish motifs alongside subtle references to renewable energy, a visual representation of the harmony they had achieved. His hammer struck iron with practiced precision, the familiar rhythm echoing through New Hope as it had for generations. Some things remained constant amid change: the value of skillful work, of community bonds, of living in harmony with the land. These were the foundations that had allowed them to face an uncertain future with confidence rather than fear. And as the iron glowed beneath his hammer, Jacob knew with quiet certainty that this thoughtful integration of enduring wisdom with new knowledge, was the true legacy of New Hope. Not merely survival, but a light shining in all directions, illuminating a path forward for both traditional communities and a modern world increasingly aware of what it had lost in the name of progress. This was the future they had built together, stone by stone, hand by hand, choice by choice. A future where the question was no longer whether tradition and progress could coexist, but how each might strengthen the other in service of what truly mattered. Up next, we have two more incredible stories that are waiting for you. Just click the image you want to watch and it will take you there. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. It would mean a lot.